As they describe their experiences flying on airplanes, fearful flyers often use various terms such as fear, anxiety, phobia, panic, panic attacks, and other terms as they describe their fears. Distinguishing the difference between these terms can often be quite difficult, and as a result, the terms are often used inaccurately or altogether incorrectly. In an effort to develop a common language as you begin the process of overcoming a fear of flying, it's important that you have a clear and distinguishable working definition of these terms. So let's jump right in. Fear is currently defined by the Webster's Dictionary as an agitated foreboding, often of some real or specific peril, and as the possibility that something dreaded or unwanted may occur. These definitions really underscore several aspects of fear. The essential feature of fear is that it's related to the probable occurrence of an event that hasn't yet occurred, meaning that the concern is that this event will occur sometime in the future. So, fear refers to the appraisal that a given situation has the potential to be dangerous, and therefore fear is a process as opposed to an emotional reaction. Fear is a rational, adaptive response. Fear has allowed human beings and all species the ability to survive because we're able to identify danger and then decide to flee from it or confront it. So, let's say, for example, you come across a hungry, growling bear in the woods while you're out for a hike. You would assess the situation as dangerous and threatening, and hopefully you would most likely choose to get away from that bear. If this response wasn't activated, your ability to survive would be greatly compromised. The problem is that we often fear situations or stimuli that are not actually dangerous, and this is not adaptive. This brings us to anxiety. Anxiety, on the other hand, can be defined as an intense emotional state, often marked by such physical symptoms as tension, tremor, sweating, palpitations, increased pulse rate, and other physiological symptoms. Anxiety can be distinguished from fear in that, as fear is an adaptive appraisal of a threatening situation, anxiety is the emotional response to that appraisal. So, anxiety is the response to fear. Another aspect of anxiety is that it can occur without an external threat, like the bear, and therefore it can be internally generated. For example, you might worry about being in the woods, even if the likelihood of being threatened by a bear is non existent. So the anxiety is not adaptive because you might avoid taking pleasurable walks in the woods, say with your friends and family, because of the unrealistic anxiety you have about bears. A similar process occurs when you anticipate an upcoming flight that you have scheduled. Perhaps the unpleasant thoughts you find yourself thinking days, weeks, or even months before the flight cause you significant physical discomfort. Maybe these thoughts make it difficult to fall asleep at night, or you find yourself tensing different muscles in your body as you think about your upcoming flight. You might even find yourself feeling nauseous. These are examples of a type of anxiety called anticipatory anxiety. To reduce these unpleasant feelings, people often avoid the situation altogether. To stop these feelings, you might cancel your flight and decide to stay home. In the short term, this reduces the unpleasant feelings, but then you've foregone a vacation, or maybe you weren't able to participate in an important business meeting. The avoidance can create difficulties with family, careers, and life satisfaction. Those who avoid such situations might also feel shame or embarrassment or anger at themselves or others. The terms panic and panic attack can be described as a sudden, overwhelming, and overpowering sense of impending catastrophe, marked by pervasive inhibitions and accompanied by increasing or frantic attempts to secure safety. Various symptoms that a person can experience during a panic attack can include feeling disoriented or confused. They can experience peculiar sensations or numbness in their limbs, and just the general feeling of being engulfed by uncontrollable anxiety. A phobia refers to the irrational, intense, and persistent fear of a specific situation, activity, thing, or persons, despite the fact that the feared object is relatively safe. The main symptom of a phobia is the excessive, unreasonable desire to avoid the feared stimulus. The fear is beyond the person's control. The fear is often recognized by individuals as excessive or unreasonable in proportion to the actual dangerousness of the object, activity, or situation, but the person just can't seem to shake this fear. Sometimes people have a phobia, say, of spiders, and are for the most part able to avoid the feared object, the spiders, and live a satisfying life. Unfortunately, some phobias significantly interfere with a person's life because avoiding the feared object necessitates much effort. It can irritate others and prevent the person from engaging in normal activities. Some of the most common phobias in the general population involve dogs, snakes, spiders, mice, along with other situations like heights, driving in cars, riding public transportation, or flying on airplanes, which is called aerophobia. Now, not everyone who is afraid to fly on airplanes has aerophobia, which brings us to some of the other issues that can accompany a fear of flying. Often people that are afraid of flying are not necessarily afraid of flying in and of itself. Rather, they're afraid of being in tight, enclosed spaces where they believe they will suffocate because of a perceived lack of oxygen. This condition is called claustrophobia. The cabins of airplanes are often long, narrow, and with low ceilings, and this type of environment can produce a claustrophobic response. Another type of phobia that fearful flyers may suffer from is known as agoraphobia. People with agoraphobia have a fear of having a panic attack while being unable to escape from the environment where the panic attack is occurring. Because the first reaction from someone who is having a panic attack is to escape the situation where the attack is occurring, an airplane poses unique challenges to people that suffer with agoraphobia. Once the airplane is airborne, there is nowhere for the person to escape to, and it is this concern about being trapped during the panic attack that triggers the panic attack in the first place. Additionally, people with agoraphobia often worry about embarrassing themselves in front of other people during an attack by trying to do something foolish. I've been told by fearful flyers with agoraphobia that they worry that they will try to jump out of the airplane should they have a panic attack while airborne, despite the fact that opening a door in flight would be physically impossible because of the cabin pressurization that exists once the airplane is off the ground. A third type of phobia is called acrophobia. People with acrophobia have a fear of heights, and particularly high places where they feel especially vulnerable. The most common places that cause problems for people with acrophobia are tall buildings and high natural geographic places like mountains. Individuals with this condition are not afraid to fly on airplanes. However, they often hold a mental image that they will somehow fall out of the airplane, either by falling out of an emergency exit or by the floor dropping out, and thus avoid flying altogether. The last issue that is often a factor in people that avoid air travel is called post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. PTSD can occur in individuals that have been exposed to stressful or traumatic events. These events can include war, traffic accidents, airplane accidents, physical or sexual abuse, violent crimes of all types, or really any event that can cause someone to experience a high level of physical or emotional distress. People respond to these types of events in different ways, and certainly not everyone that is exposed to them develops PTSD. For those individuals that do develop PTSD, one of the main symptoms is an overall lack of trust in others. Out of all the different modes of transportation that people utilize, flying on airplanes requires arguably one of the highest degrees of trust among passengers. Passengers have to trust the pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, ground personnel, and air traffic controllers to do their jobs effectively and safely, and this can be incredibly difficult for people that suffer with PTSD. So hopefully this information has affirmed what you already knew and helped clarify any terms or concepts you may have been less familiar with. Having a clear understanding of the terms covered in this presentation will enhance your learning experience as you work through the modules to follow. I'll see you in the next presentation.